Hi, it's Mark Sacconi with the Journal of Commerce. I'm here with Ken Roberts, president of WorldCity, based out of Coral Gables, Florida. Ken, can you give us a little bit of an overview of what your company does?
Sure, Mark, I'd be glad to. We do primarily two things. Both of them essentially look at the impact of the global economy on local communities. So in Miami, where we're based, we do a lot of events for the multinationals there. But from a Journal of Commerce perspective, what's most interesting, we do trade publications around the country that look at how various communities trade with the world. So we do Los Angeles trade numbers, Houston trade numbers, Laredo trade numbers, Miami trade numbers, Georgia trade numbers, U.S. trade numbers, and so forth, perishables trade numbers. We look at how imports and exports are affecting local communities.
Interesting. And what did you guys see last year? Now that 2011 is behind us.
Yeah, well, there were quite a few little interesting trends that we saw in the trade data. Probably the most interesting one, and it doesn't happen very often, is that for only the third time in the last 20 years, Los Angeles was not the nation's #1 customs district. New York was. That tends to happen when the economy is going bad because it means fewer imports are coming in from Asia because American consumers are spending less. I don't think that's the case this time. The last time it happened was in 2001, ironically, when the 9/11 attack occurred. New York actually finished #1 that year ahead of Los Angeles because we were already in a recession. This year I think it has more to do with energy prices, oil prices. Some of that comes into the New York area. China's trade is not growing as fast as it has been historically, although it's still at record levels. So I think that's what's going on there with that piece of the story. Another sort of very interesting thing we see in the trade data is that gold imports continue to surge into the U.S., and then that gold tends to leave the U.S. and head for Switzerland. What that indicates to me is two things. One, the price of gold is very, very high. And two, that is people who are looking for security in an uncertain time. In their minds, the global economy is still uncertain, and they're trying to hedge their bets. For the first time this year, we noticed more of that gold, instead of all going to Switzerland as it traditionally does, some of it was going to the Middle East, which was kind of interesting as well. So a slight difference there.
What have you been seeing with our neighbors to the north and south, Mexico and Canada?
Yeah, another trend we see when we look at the countries, most of the countries of the world have recovered from the global trade slowdown of 2008, 2009. Some notable exceptions would be Canada and some of the European countries, the developed countries. Their trade with the U.S. to some extent has not recovered. Mexico's trade with the U.S. has recovered and rebounded very strongly. In fact, one of the very first customs districts in the country to come out of the global trade slowdown was El Paso, which does overall majority of its trade with Mexico, and ironically is sort of at ground zero of the violence you hear about in Mexico, but yet El Paso's trade was hitting record levels way back in 2009. Laredo's at record levels as well. Laredo does probably 40% or more of all U.S. trade with Mexico.
What kind of impact have you seen from the economic slowdown in the EU?
The EU, what's going on largely with the U.S. trade is interestingly somewhat balanced now. If you look at geographic regions, the top 10 trade partners, there's 3 European countries in the top 10, Great Britain, Germany, and France. Those countries in Europe, largely their trade with the U.S. has not rebounded to the pre-recession levels. If you look at the other countries around the world, China, Taiwan, Korea, Brazil, Mexico, their trade has rebounded sharply and nicely. In fact, Brazil moved up 2 positions to rank as the #8 ranked trade partner of the U.S. this year, their highest ranking ever. So you've got, in the top 10 of the U.S., you've got 3 in the hemisphere, Canada, Mexico, and Brazil. You've got 3 from Europe, the ones I mentioned, Germany, UK, and France, and then you've got the rest are Asian partners, China, South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. Interestingly, Japan has still not recovered its U.S. trade levels yet. So it remains slowed down.
Now, we won't hold you to these, but what do you expect for the coming year?
I think you're going to see, everything that I look at suggests to me that you'll see trade continue to do very well. There'll be obvious exceptions. There's several factors that go into our overall U.S. trade. One is how the U.S. economy is doing from a consumer's point of view, and gradually over the last couple of years that has resumed and picked up. It's been sort of slow but steady, I would call it. The other one is the price of fuel. And as we know, anybody who has to put gas in their car knows the price of gasoline is increasingly expensive. Well, that affects our trade as well, because as the price of oil goes up, the dollar value of trade goes up. So it's particularly good for a customs district like Houston or New Orleans. some of those that deal with, or New York, New Jersey, some of those that deal with petroleum products. I think that you'll see that continue to be strong, but we also do very well now by refining that fuel in the United States and shipping it back out. We export record amounts. We're exporting record amounts of sort of refined petroleum or gasoline and other fuels now.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Glad to do it. Thanks.